As we sit at the very beginning of a new year, 2026, what will be the big crime stories that will shape the legal landscape?
Also, in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about our backgrounds and our experience as attorneys.
And also, let's look back. What were the top true crime stories in 2025?
You lost. And you know what you did.
I'm attorney Andrew Myers. This is About the Law. Joining me is California attorney Yolie Medina. Hi, Yoli. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm hanging in there. You know, we're getting through the holidays. We're at the very beginning of the new year here. And so it's exciting both to look ahead into what are the crazy things that are going to happen that will follow, and what happened in 2025. What were the top stories? And we haven't even discussed what our opinions are, but do you want to go first and tell our audience what you think one of the top stories of 2025 was? In no order, just what we're thinking.
You know, I think that Kohberger pleading guilty was one of the biggest shocks of the 2025 year for me. I just didn't expect it, and that was one of the biggest stories I think out there. It's just a strange case, and it keeps getting stranger. I know he pled guilty, but the case is very interesting to me. So I think that was one of the cases that was the biggest story and was the biggest shock for a lot of people, that he pled guilty.
I will have to agree with you. I'm not a pro-Burger, and I'm not anti-Kohberger. I just thought, we did follow that case quite a bit. We did many episodes on that case, and we were all looking forward to a trial that had been explained as a 3-month trial, so when he pled guilty in July, it was a shock. It was a big shock. But the other top story of 2025 was obviously, to me, the Karenread trial number 2, which went on for weeks. There were 33 days of trial. The jury came back and found her not guilty of all the major charges. The town of Dedham, Massachusetts went crazy. The helicopters were flying overhead as the streets in front of the Norfolk County Superior Court in Dedham went crazy. So that has to be a huge, huge, huge number one story. So I would say that Kohberger and Reed were both pretty much tied for number one in 2025.
And I think they're both going to have Lifetime movies, the Idaho 4 case and Karenread. I saw a trailer or something for a Lifetime movie about Karenread.
Right. But if you want to follow, week by week summaries of, weekend viewing back on the Karenread trial, we did them right here, and you can go back, go down below and check it out. You can follow all that here. Crazy. So what's next on your list?
Let's see. The Nick Reiner case.
Yeah.
That one is, that's pretty interesting to me. We'll see what happens with it, but on January 7th, they're going to, he's going to hopefully submit his plea, and I'm curious as to what it's going to be.
That also, you say that the Kohberger plea was shocking. That was shocking too. That was shocking to everyone. Rob Reiner has been around in Hollywood for years and years and years, and so that was really a shock. So what will be my number 2 looking back? I think I'm going to pick P. Diddy. The P. Diddy conviction. He got 4 years and 2 months. He could have gotten life. He was convicted in July and given that 4 year and 2 month sentence. He was also fined $500,000. The least of the charges that he was given was the charge that the jury found him guilty on. That was exporting people across state lines for you know what. But he was found not guilty on the two major charges, trafficking and racketeering. So he could have gotten up to life, but, to get the 4-year and 2-month sentence, a little bit more than a year has already been served. That was, and he's already appealed. He's already asking for the judge to take another look at that sentence. So that too will trail into the new year.
I didn't follow that case very much. But, it was a lot of celebrities involved and as witnesses, I think. And I don't know, I didn't follow it. I wasn't totally interested in it because for some reason I thought he was going to get off. But he didn't.
Well, I kind of followed it. We did a couple of episodes early on where we got, the algorithm didn't like us and pushed us down or demonetized that particular episode because I was just reporting, what I saw, and I got tired of that. So there are a lot of other creators that did follow the P. Diddy trial. So I figured let them do it, and we will focus on Kohberger and Reed, and we did.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other case that I was pleased about in true crime is that the Micah Miller case. I don't know if you're familiar with that case.
Mm-hmm. Not anywhere near as familiar as you, but go ahead.
Yeah, she self-deleted herself, and I'm sorry we have to say that because we can't say the other word, otherwise it hurts the channel. It could hurt the channel. And so she was found in a park, state park, I think it was, or national park, face down in the water. And the funny thing about, not funny, but the strange thing about it is that the rigor mortis, where the blood pools, was on her back, and she was found face down, but the rigor mortis was on her back. So that really didn't make sense because that would mean she would be the other way around. So it seemed like somebody dumped her body there. And one of the witnesses, the very first person who saw her, was killed in a car accident not too long ago, maybe 7 months ago. So it was kind of strange, but it was a car accident. He was killed. And the FBI raided Micah Miller's husband. They raided his home, and he's a pastor, so he had all these people following him, and he gave the craziest interviews. I mean, crazy. He was like, you should watch one of his interviews. He gave it to a national media outlet, and he literally was. He would say, "Oh, I'm lying. Sorry." It was so bizarre. He was bizarre.
That's nuts.
It was bizarre. And he gave this sermon after her death that was very strange. So he was charged with cyber stalking under the federal stalking statute, which is very interesting because that statute is it's not rarely used, but you rarely hear about it being used. And he's not charged with her unaliving, but he's charged with the cyber stalking and misleading investigators. So the indictment was for the cyber stalking law, federal, and for giving investigators misinformation, lying to the investigators. So it's an interesting law, and I'm glad to see that it's in use. I mean, he's innocent until proven guilty, but he's been indicted. And he's a very strange man. I don't know. And Micah Miller was so beautiful, and she had a beautiful voice. She would sing, and her family was so nice. It's just really sad. But that was another case that he was just recently indicted, and I thought, wow, that's a big one.
Okay, there again, there's a 2025 case that will carry through to 2026. If we get 5 people down below saying they want us to do an episode on that, we'll do it. And, thanks for bringing that one in. So let me see what will be. Oh my God, there were so many of them. Some that we covered and some that we didn't. One that I've referenced in the past. This will be our last one looking back at 2025. In Mississippi, 14 law enforcement officers, including 2 sheriffs, were indicted on October 22nd of 2025, accused of taking bribes of up to $20,000 and a little bit more to assist in transporting of drugs. And they, transported them as far down as Florida. And some of them have now pled out. Some of them have been dismissed out, but still a lot of Mississippi law enforcement officers face trial if they can't resolve the matter on actually helping drug dealers move the drugs. They look the other way, and this is huge. And in a previous episode, we said that if we get 5 people asking us to do episodes on that, we'll do it. And Yoli, we have 5, so we'll do it.
Okay.
So now we've each given our 5 top cases. If you don't agree, or if you think there's something that we should have put on our list of the top 5 cases in 2025, let us know down below. Let us know what you wanted us to include in that list down below. Some of them carry into the new year, and we'll do that list upcoming. But first of all, we're going to talk about our backgrounds, because people have asked, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit. Neither one of us came to the law in, there's no traditional, there's no cookie cutter. But Yoli, why don't you start and tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I majored in psychology. So I got my bachelor's degree in 1992. And I majored in psychology with an emphasis in physiological psychology, which is how the brain gets affected by certain chemicals and things like that. And so I majored in psychology, and then I worked as a mental health worker for maybe 5-6 years before I went to law school. Let me see, how many years? Well, I don't know, 5 or 6. And I loved that job. I dealt with mentally ill people, severely mentally ill, that they were hospitalized. A lot of them were geriatrics, but a minority of them were actually adults. And, I've seen people with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, where their hands are just bloodied from washing. They just cannot stop it. And sometimes medication they have to find the right medication, so they hospitalize them. And, I've seen people in posy vests so that they don't hurt themselves. It's a vest that keeps their arms in front of them. Mm-hmm. And I really liked—
I've seen those.
Yeah, I really liked working in that field. And I had a kind of a unique position, because I was like an observer, and I would chart what I would observe. And so, just to give you an example of one of the things that I did that was kind of interesting, I thought, anyway, I think it is. There was a guy, he was a geriatric gentleman, and he had dementia, and he was also bipolar in his before he got dementia. So he was at a nursing home, and he would, at times when he had to urinate, he would just start urinating everywhere in the nursing home. And so he would take off, he had his Depends or whatever, but it wouldn't matter. He would just start urinating. And so they hospitalized him because he was just not well. And so I was tasked, he was one of my patients. I was tasked to observe him. So I would watch him, and I would see him, because in every hospital they have a pay phone, because the patients are supposed to have access to a phone. And so I would watch him, and he would start to go to the phone, and he would try to pick up the phone, and he would play with the phone. And then immediately after that, after a little bit of playing with the phone, he would start urinating everywhere. And so I looked into his background and whatnot, and he was a security guard for a downtown LA building. So whenever he had to go to the bathroom, he had to call for relief. Okay. So
makes sense now.
So yes, so the treatment was not medication, because they medicate these poor elderly people, and they're just they're medicated, and then they're a fall risk, they break a hip, and it's downhill from there. So the approach when the treatment teams, because I used to go to the treatment teams every week and talk about the patients that were assigned to me, and the treatment plan was, whenever he goes to the phone, and yes, they said he does linger by the phone a lot, and whenever he starts picking it up, you take him to the bathroom. Solved.
Wow. Let me ask you this. I'm sure you have a depth of other experiences you could talk about. Now that you're an attorney and you've been an attorney for a number of years, do you have any regrets of going to law school and leaving that career behind and going to law school and becoming an attorney? Any regrets?
I kind of do sometimes because I really love that job, but it was sort of a job that was, if I was going to do that, I was going to be doing that for like, there's no room to move like anywhere. It's like you're sort of in the middle and, you're not a doctor, you're not a nurse, you're sort of the in-between person. And it's kind of hard to move in any direction, like upward. It would be management if I wanted to, public health or management. And I didn't really want to do that. So yeah, I could have been in that job forever. But there wasn't any way to move up. I thought about getting an RN, to be a licensed psychiatric nurse. I thought about different things, and they have a licensed psychiatric technician. And so I was thinking about a lot of things, even going to medical school. So I had taken some of the prerequisites for medical school in my psychology degree. And I just thought, I was always interested in law and true crime. And so I went to law school. And so I do sometimes have regrets, but at the same time, what I learned and what my experience as a mental health worker has helped me a lot with the work that I do now. It's like a lot of the kids that I represented, they were birth injuries, and some of them, they have criminal tendencies when they get older. And sometimes it's a brain injury that happened during birth, and they have difficulty regulating their impulsivity. That part of the brain is damaged. And so that's not an excuse, okay, by any means, that, but with early intervention, you can get these kids help, and hopefully they don't end up a statistic, committing crimes. So it's helped me a lot. And I like what I do now. It's just with COVID, everything slowed down, and California is still disorganized with the courts. So it's hard to move anything. Like, it's hard to do my work now because of the courts, because I'm a litigator. I don't settle like pre-litigation, or, I don't do that. I'm a litigator. I'm in court. I do a trial. I started out doing trials. So that's the other thing. When I went to law school, one of my first experiences was I was sent to St. Croix in the Virgin Islands.
Oh, wow.
And
Lucky you.
yeah, before I passed the bar, that's where I went. And the reason why they sent me there was because I speak Spanish. So there was a discrimination case there against the Department of Agriculture, and Ann Veneman, who was the Secretary of Agriculture. And she was being sued. The government was being sued because they were discriminating against natives of St. Croix, because over there's no tract housing. You have to purchase a lot and then get a loan to build your home. And so people were purchasing lots, but they couldn't get a loan to build their home. And so it turned out a whistleblower was, she was seeing this happening, and they were putting people on a list, and that list never went to Congress so they could give guaranteed loans. So it looked like not too many people were applying for loans. And they were giving tourists or giving outsiders the priority. And so there was a huge litigation. And I went there to screen the Puerto Ricans, people who spoke Spanish, who migrated there, Cubans, all kinds, very different Spanish speaking people. So that's where I was for the first 3 months after I finished law school, and after I took the bar. And then I came back and I worked with an attorney, Federico Sayer, who basically sued public entities. That's all I did for the first 4 years, is I sued public entities.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Process. So then I ended up getting into medical malpractice. I did a couple of cases. I liked it. I went to one of the firms that did medical malpractice in Orange County. And from there, I just started doing medical malpractice. But my early career was civil rights, suing government claims. And I had two noteworthy cases that were in the news. And I was sort of famous here. I know it's hard to believe, but I was famous. I handled the UCI willed body parts case, where they were selling body parts, allegedly selling body parts, I should say, because nobody was.
Oh, wow. So have you followed the case about Harvard in Boston? And some people just recently were sentenced for selling human body parts out of Harvard Medical School in Boston. So that's a case that you've handled something similar to that.
Absolutely. It was against the UC Regents. And I linked the two cases. There was UCLA and UCI, and I took the deposition of a driver, Harry's Mortuary Transport Service. That's what it was called. And throughout this litigation, nobody had taken his deposition. So I thought there's something strange about this. I took his deposition, and this is in a newspaper. It's in a newspaper article. I have it, where he would, this Harry's Mortuary guy would pick up body parts in a plastic black bag. Okay.
Oh my God.
And drive to UCLA, meet this African-American doctor on the third elevator, the third floor at the elevator. And he would give the body parts to the African-American doctor. And then the doctor would give him money. So I was like, whoa. So that was all over the news. I was in the news and whatnot. And so that they made a lot of changes in California because of that. They started having, I guess, those scan codes on body parts so that they can track them.
Well, yeah. How much did this doctor that picked up the stuff, how much did he pay for these parts, and what did he do with them?
Oh gosh, he was selling them to like conventions and things like that so that they could use them for display, or there was a lot of people involved in this. I mean, they were transporting spines to Arizona. It was very, very, I'll send you the article. It was in the Orange County Register.
So it sounds like it was kind of sort of for medical use, which I thought that there was some sort of a procedure that would be followed that could be done so med students could actually work on a cadaver and that kind of thing. But in the case here in New England, the people were getting the body parts from Harvard and Boston. It was a married couple up in Goffstown, New Hampshire, outside of Manchester, New Hampshire. And they were selling them to this whole underworld of people. For example, a guy in Pennsylvania was collecting these things. He'd clean them up and dry them and collect them. There was a shop in Salem, Massachusetts, Wichtown, that actually had a shop. And we did an episode on that some time ago where this shop actually sold body parts that she dressed up like dolls or whatever. And it was actually open. It was in the open. And there were shops like this all over the place. So I guess the two ultimate uses of those human body parts were very different. I thought it was macabre. I thought it was outrageous.
I don't know if any of those body parts were given to people like that, that are collecting them, because there were no records. The records were a mess, right? So, but what they were also doing is they were promising the family or getting into a contract that they would return the ashes once the body was used. Well, they weren't returning that. They started acting like a mortuary at that point when they started saying, we'll return the ashes to you. Because what would happen, and we even got down to the nitty gritty. We had I won't say the name, but it's public record. But we had a family that got the remains back, and then this scandal broke, and they went to a forensic specialist, and they went through the ashes, and in the ashes were these buttons that were from a cowboy shirt. And it was all the buttons of a cowboy shirt and a specific brand of a cowboy shirt. And then we had an odontist, or I don't know, forensic dentist or whatever, found a bridge in some part of the bridge, or I don't know, in those ashes. Well, the gentleman did not have a bridge, and he never wore cowboy shirts. So they got the wrong ashes. And then we had people going out in a boat, and, the outside would say, oh, Mary so-and-so. And then they would go and they would dump the ashes. And then the tag inside would say Alexander so-and-so. So it was like all messed up. So that was the one case, big case that I handled. And then another case was against social services, and they were held 12% liable for a child's unaliving.
That's awful.
Yeah, I don't even like.
Oh, that's awful. So you anticipated my next question. You already anticipated, and I think answered it. So your mental health background and your psychology degree obviously have given you insight that has been helpful in your legal career. And, you've been helpful talking about the mental health aspect of the cases that we cover. I go back to Kohberger, and he had his issues. And then Nick Reiner is said, and that case has just started. And you talked about that. So that's helped you quite a bit. And I think you anticipated my final question, and I'm going to ask it in a different way. What's a good day for you in your law practice? What's a good day?
When I settle a case.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that's a good day.
Any closing comments on that before I talk about my background, which I really don't want to do, but I will.
I'll ask you questions. The reason why I say settle a case is because I do medical malpractice, and if it's not against a hospital, if it's against a doctor, you got to get the doctor to consent. So a good day is taking a very good deposition of a doctor or a healthcare professional and then getting to settle the case. So most of my cases settle. I had one case that did not settle, and I tried the case, and the courts were so discombobulated, it's not even funny.
I've done a little bit of medical malpractice, more dental malpractice than medical, and it is a major effort. People come to me and they say, "Oh, it's an open and shut case. The doctor did this." Whoa, just the procedural matrix that you have to get through here in both of the states I practice in. You have to get past a tribunal. And that requires that you have a medical narrative that shows what the doctor did wrong, whether it's substandard care, whether if it's substandard care, how that specifically caused damages. They might have done something wrong, but if you can't prove causally related damages. So the ink was still wet on my, and this isn't anything I do regularly, but the ink was still wet on my law degree when I was given a dental malpractice case. Give it to him. We give him all. He's at the bottom of the totem pole at this firm. Let's give him all the losers. So I was up against a very professional, skilled, seasoned attorney at an international firm, and they just do insurance defense. Well, this guy, that's all he did was malpractice. And when he got in front of the jury, they relaxed. They laughed. He had a slight Southern accent. They loved him. Me, I was just out of law school. I'm nervous as hell. I go before the jury. The first thing I do is I call the doctor. That's kind of a no-no. You usually, when you have a plaintiff's case, you call your own person to tell the story and set the scene and, give the jury, a personal idea. No, I called the doctor, and we had asked him to bring his notes. And I asked the dentist, "These are your notes?" "Yeah." And you brought them here today?" "Yes." "Could you read them for the jury?" "Oh, objection." He ended up reading them he couldn't read his own notes.
I'm actually grateful for electronic medical records because before, I'm telling you, I would have to, you couldn't read their notes. They would have to read it into the record in a deposition. It's just like,
yeah. I'm sure that this attorney, who was an excellent attorney, very good, seasoned, that's all he did was medical malpractice. This was my first one.
Yeah.
I'm certain that prior to the anticipated testimony of this dentist, I'm certain that he would have prepared him, but that didn't happen. So, before I went to law school, I was in the TV and radio business. I went to Emerson College in Boston, which has a theater department and a media department. I know it's changed quite a bit since I've been there because I've talked to people there, but I got a degree in mass media. And I worked in the radio business in New England, a bunch of different stations, because those jobs, they're fungible and they change and they pay nothing. So if you can get a few bucks more an hour, you go somewhere else. So I worked at a whole bunch of radio stations in New England, and then I transitioned into TV. I worked at the public TV station in New Hampshire. I was an anchor. I was a reporter. We went up to the State House. And covered legislative stuff, and then the ABC affiliate had been purchased by new owners, and they were changing it all around and doing everything new and everything different, bringing in all new people and getting rid of most of the old people. So I was part of that. I worked at the ABC affiliate in Manchester for about 5 years, I think. I should have thought about that before I did that. And I was a general field reporter, which meant, you covered fires. When it was a blizzard, you'd stand out in the blizzard and say, yeah, look, it's snowing. One of my favorite things. And then I became their political guy. I did most of their political reporting. Oh, wow. And I did the political stuff. I started a show that's still on the air to this day, which is one of those Sunday talk shows where we would call in the governor, call in the political people and it was a great experience because, as you know, the New Hampshire primary, which has diminished a little bit in its scope and prominence, is in New Hampshire. So I met, in radio, I met Jimmy Carter, kept him waiting for 20 minutes in the holding room because he didn't have an appointment. Met the Clintons, met both of the Bushes, met Jesse Jackson. What a tall man. I had no idea how tall the man was, but I talked to him. I met my childhood idol, John Glenn. He was kind of rude to me because we didn't have an appointment, and so he was my childhood idol because I used to stay home from school and watch all the space shots. And he was running for president at one point, and I just ran into him in the streets of Concord, New Hampshire. And I went over and started talking to him, and he was kind of rude because, all this stuff interviews are set up in advance. So I was really disappointed that, one of my childhood idols had been rude to me. So I covered trials, although back then cameras were rarely, if ever, allowed in courtrooms. So we would go in with our legal pad, and that the way we would cover things is we would go into the courtroom. We could sit there, reporters, members of the public. We would go into the courtroom and sit there with our legal pads and watch the trial, and then we would try and catch people out in the hallway, which we could do, or we would catch people outside of the courthouse and interview them. And so that's how we did the legal coverage. And doing that has helped me in the long run because I got to know a fair number of senators, lawyers, and I actually, thought a lot. My grandfather was an attorney in New York City, and my uncle on my father's side was an attorney in Seattle. We used to go visit him when I was a kid. So in the back of my mind, I always had, being a lawyer. My uncle in Seattle, nicest guy in the world. I could tell you stories about him. Nicest guy in the world. But one day he said, Andy, you'll never be a lawyer because you didn't take Latin. And back then, I guess that's true. Back in those days, the cities all have Latin schools, or at least you study Latin. I never. So anyhow, that was in the back of my mind. So as a reporter, I would actually, if I got the opportunity to talk to a attorney, I would sit down and talk to them, ask them, or I would, if they were busy and I was busy, I had to get back to the station and, do a story at 6. I would ask them, could I give you a call? Can I come over to your office? Can we have a cup of coffee? And I would just sit down and ask them questions about, what I should do, whether I should go. And at least one attorney, a very prominent attorney who will remain nameless, I don't think it says, Andy, I don't think you should go to law school because, you're a good reporter. You could go places in this business and you're the creative type. I can tell from the way you package your stories and put your video. You're a creative type. That's not for a lawyer.
Well, so what made you want to go to law school? What was the tipping point or what?
It had always been in the back of my mind. It had always been in the back of my mind. I remember one trial that I had covered back when I was in the radio business. It was just a fascinating first-degree M trial, and I attended not gavel to gavel, but as many things as I could, as many sessions as I could. And that particular trial ended in a mistrial, and it just. The legal terminology and talking to the lawyers were fairly friendly. They would talk to us in breaks and at the end of the day. So that bug was in my head. And so that bug had always been in my head. And I just, I made the switch. One of the last stories I ever covered as a reporter was the Challenger, the space shuttle Challenger blowing up.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was
Kristen
a long time ago.
McCullough was from New Hampshire. And she actually had taught one of the other reporters at the TV station that I worked at. So we were given access, all kinds of access. I had talked to her and her husband, by the way. Her husband was one of the guys that I talked to about, whether I should go to law school or not. He later became a judge. But in any event, this is one of the very last stories I ever covered before I went to law school. The day in January 1986, the whole nation was watching, but the whole state was. Imagine how proud we were in New Hampshire that this school teacher from Concord was going to go up on the Challenger. So I was sitting in the executive council chambers with Governor John Sununu in Concord, New Hampshire. And we were going to, we were watching it together, and it was going to be a nice little feature about what the governor thought. He knew the family, and, we were going to, stay there afterwards and cover the beginning of the flight of the Challenger. And he was an engineer before he was a politician. The minute that the thing, had the catastrophic event, he's an engineer. He knew exactly what happened. None of this, we'll have to find out. His face went ashen gray.
Oh my God.
And he knew exactly what happened. He looked at me, walked out of the room. Yeah, he walked out of the room, went into his office, and the TV station had to call and ask him to come back out. But that was one of the last things I ever covered.
That was in what, 1984, 85?
1986.
Or 86.
January, I believe it was the 28th. I know it was January 1986 because that's the year I went off to law school.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I was a field reporter, and I also occasionally anchored the weekend news, and I also occasionally produced the weekend news. But you do everything. You're out of you're out in the blizzards. With a ruler telling people, oh, look, it snowed 3 feet.
So your legal career, you've done quite a bit with your legal career too. You've done a lot of things, maybe a little bit of criminal defense, a little bit of eviction law.
Yeah. I started out doing pretty much everything. I was the low man at the totem pole with the law firm. And I advanced to junior partner, but then I went out on my own. And when I went out on my own, I was given the advice to take anything that walked in the door. And I kind of did, although I got out of family law right away. I just got out of family law right away. It's not my cup of tea. I did do defense. But I really transitioned mostly into civil law, even though I have a lifelong interest in true crime and following criminal trials. I've pretty much done, civil stuff. I've pretty much done, personal injury, property disputes, business disputes. It's unfortunate how many business disputes are out there. A little bit of everything.
Well, I wanted to go into criminal law, but that just never happened. But I did handle cases that arose from criminal cases. You know what I mean? So it was like, it's kind of like the karenread. There's a civil case now after the criminal case is over. Those kind of things, because this child abuse case, there was a criminal case first, and then there was a civil case against the social workers in the County of Orange. So I'm familiar with that part of it. I know, but I've always wanted to do criminal law, and I still think about maybe doing it, but I'm too old.
Well, no, you're not too old. I occasionally will take a criminal case and work it, and I do associate myself with people. I do know some very good criminal attorneys. I associate myself with them because it's a whole different world. It's a whole different animal, and I hate to say it, and people aren't going to like it, but many of the cases end up settling out. Many of the cases end up in a plea. It's just the way it is. Many of the cases end up with some kind of a plea, whether that's right or whether that's wrong. The courts don't really have the time to really try every single case, but I've tried some.
California.
Yeah.
Yeah, California is really bad with the plea deals because there's not enough judges, not enough courts, and it's just they get released. And in Riverside County, there was like thousands of cases that got dismissed because they didn't waive their right to a speedy trial. And when the trial came, they didn't have anybody to hear the case, so they had to dismiss them.
Oh my goodness. Well,
Yeah.
Massachusetts has dismissed some cases recently because they could not find, public defenders from the CPCS program, we call it here. A lot of the attorneys in CPCS refused to, keep working because they were getting paid peanuts. And it's, so when they couldn't find attorneys, a ton of cases got dismissed. I think it was like 65 in one day in the Boston Municipal Court. And it's sad. So that happens in Mass too. I haven't heard of it happening in New Hampshire. I'm licensed in both states, but and of course the law is very different in both states.
Yeah.
So
each state has their own laws. So what do you think about what's going to be in the future for true crime this 2026?
Oh, okay. You want to move on to our crystal ball and figuring out what are the big cases in 2026? Okay, I'll do 3 and you do 3. Let's see. I have a whole list of them here. And they're all big. The follow-up to Kohberger and the follow-up to Reed, and all the civil cases in Reed, those are the top of the list. But what I'm going to pick is Kelsey Fitzsimmons. She is that North Andover police officer that when they were serving her with a restraining order, there was a scuffle and a gun was fired, and she took a gun and it didn't fire. But when she went to refire it, the story is she claims that she was only firing it, in a bad attempt to take her own life. Thank God that didn't work. She was granted bail, but then it was revoked because one of the conditions was that she had to blow into a breath test. And in the scuffle, she had been shot. And among her injuries were chest bruises and a fractured rib. And so she couldn't blow into the alcohol breath tester. So they revoked her bail. She spent 100 days in jail. She is charged with 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon. However, the grand jury refused to indict her on a more serious charge of armed assault with intent to murder. And it's a horrible case. Horrible case. She has children.
She has children. She has children.
Yeah, she was in postpartum depression. She had just had a child. So the reason I put this on the top of my list for February 2026 is because her trial date is in February 9th of 2026, and it's quite a case. And yeah, we'll cover it. I've gotten some questions as to why I didn't cover it. I had an office in North Andover for 27 years, but so that's the case that's on top of my list.
Okay. For me, let's see. It's gonna have to be the Nick Reiner case that is gonna spill over to 2026. For me, that one's very interesting because it does involve mental health and involves addiction and mental health. And it's a celebrity, and it's going to be interesting to see how he pleads. And you know what I noticed? That Nick Reiner looks different in a lot of the pictures that have been shown of him. He looks like a different person in some pictures.
I noticed that too. I didn't know what to make of it, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is it my turn? All right. The Matthew Farwell trial is set for October 5th of 2026. That's a federal trial. And so the federal court generally holds true to their scheduling. Matthew Farwell is charged with M in the awful death of Sandra Birchmore. She in 2025, going back to our big things that happened in 25, Matthew Farwell, I should say, faced a second indictment, not only for the death of her, but for her unborn child she was expecting at the time. And so, the next question associated with this, I'm not trying to cheat and get another case in there, but William Devine, in our last episode, we talked about how he was decertified as a police officer in Massachusetts, but he too allegedly groomed this young woman and had inappropriate relations with this woman. And are criminal charges going to be brought against him? Really? Is the judicial system just going to walk away from him? So
he's also an attorney, right? So I was going to look him up. I didn't look him up. I was going to look him up to see if he's still in good standing with the state bar.
Well, he was just decertified, the week before Christmas. So, as you know, the judicial system does not work that fast.
Yeah. Now it's my turn. Micah Miller. Micah Miller is going to be another one for me for 2026. Although a trial date hasn't been set, he was indicted, and so we have to see what happens with that.
There are so many, like what was on Michael Proctor's phone, but we said we're going to pick three. So my third one is the case of Ana Kepner, an 18-year-old girl who was on a Caribbean cruise with her large family. And on November 7th of 2025, her body was found wrapped in a blanket and with life preservers on top of her. She was sharing a cabin with her actual brother, Connor, 14, and her stepbrother, Timothy, 16. Connor said that he had gone to the cabin, knocked on the door. It was locked. He couldn't get in, but he heard scuffling inside as though furniture was being thrown around. And then because this happened out to sea, it's the FBI that was investigating, and they have been pretty tight-lipped about it. But this happened on November 7th of 2025, and no one has been indicted. The son, the stepbrother, Timothy, was a suspect, a person of interest, but that's all we can really say at this point. So this young woman goes on a Caribbean cruise. She had been on one earlier in the year, in the spring, loved it so much. She said she wanted to go back. Her family liked to vacation. There's a lot to the story, actually. We should probably do an episode again. If we get 5 votes, we'll do an episode on it. But, why did this horrible, horrible crime occur and no one's been indicted? It would seem like I don't like the word slam dunk, but it seems like a case where the facts would be fairly simple. So those are my 3.
Okay. Do I have one last one?
Go ahead.
The Kentucky sheriff that shot the judge. That one is interesting to me too, because it has elements of mental health in it. And it's going to be tried, I think. And is there a trial date yet? I don't remember. No,
I checked that before we went on. I checked that there's no trial date. And also in that case, remember there had been a bail hearing. The judge in that case came out and said, we're not going to go forward with the bail hearing because we're going to have to do this right. And he really didn't state any reasons for it. So there's no new date for the bail hearing, and there is no trial date. And they also haven't had any action on the motion to change venue. So no trial date on that one, but that was on my list. But you got it. Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot to look forward to covering. I'm totally interested in all these cases, and you never know what might pop up in January in the year 2026. There might be some.
No, you never know. You just never know. I really would like to know what was on Michael Proctor's phone. I don't know if we'll find that out in 2026. But Proctor said, "Oh well, you're not going to get anything out of my phone because I got a new one in 2024 and it deletes everything every 30 days." Guess what? No, they got everything on his phone out of the cloud from 2013. It was so bad that his own attorney pulled back. He was being represented in his hearings to get his job back by the union attorney. They're duty bound to represent you for the most part. Well, this goes beyond that. And the union board said, no, we're going to pull back representation because some things are just totally indefensible. I want to know what it is. And it's been said that what's on there is racist and homophobic and who knows what else. But, what's on that phone? And people need to keep pressing it. People need to keep pressing it because it's kind of dropped out of the newspapers. So, I'm glad to see that the podcasters are still asking that question. I think we should all ask that. Even if we do an episode on something else that week, even if we do something on Mickey Steins, or if we do something on Kohberger, every single week, every single podcaster should say what was on Michael Proctor's phone. So if we missed anything in terms of cases that we should look at 2026, let us know down below. Tell us.
Yeah, and Kohberger, they just released new documents, unsealed documents. So I'll have to take a look at those. So that's what we have to look forward to in Kohberger, is the releasing of all these documents that were sealed. And some of them are going to remain sealed, but others are unsealed. And so there's a few things that in the new ones that I've heard that might be interesting to cover, but we'll have to see. But, other than that, we have, the case is so strange, the Kohberger case. And I don't know why we're getting updates on how he's doing in prison.
Yeah, I could care less about that actually, but I do care about the fact that the more you look at the Idaho State Police reports and the Moscow, Idaho police reports, and look at the footage, none of it makes sense. It's making less and less sense at all. Do you want to see what our viewers are saying this week? Sure. Okay, so Christine. What is surprising me about all this Proctor stuff is that no one else is being dragged down with him. Surely he's not acting alone with this type of conduct. Andrew, it was funny to me when you mentioned the old way of reporting from your federal courts with the court artist, because that is all we here in Australia get to see. Although I do have to add that we are allowed to physically sit in on a trial. It's just not allowed to be testified. So I thought that was interesting that Australia doesn't allow streaming. So okay, fine. They can go to the trial, but what if the trial is a million miles away? You know what I mean? The Kohberger case was, out in Idaho. You're down in California. I'm here outside of Boston. Am I going to drive all the way to Idaho? No.
I would fly.
I'm sorry?
I would fly to Idaho, but not.
Okay. All right. I'm getting a funny screen here, but I think I can go there.
Okay. So this is from Sandy Grog, and I think that's how you pronounce it. It says, although I have a Lawyer t-shirt and am considering ordering a Law Nerd one, I agree with you that it really is not necessary to get into selling merchandise. I imagine it can be a headache, and just one more thing you have to think about. I really like that you don't have sponsors. I find that the people I watch who do have sponsors go way too long. I skip right through them, and most of the time, I don't even know what they are selling. I like it when legal terms are identified and explained. I don't mind it when I already know what they mean. The definition again reinforces and I can't read that.
Yeah, somebody last week had said that, we already knew what this was. Why did you waste your time, telling us what an affirmative defense was? Well, I don't know what you do know, and I don't know what you do know, but, that's part of the thing. And I do watch other creators, and they do the same thing. We don't know what you know and what you don't know. So if you already know something, that's fantastic. That is fantastic. And just bear with us while we move on to the next thing. As to the T-shirts and coffee mugs, I don't know. My mind is open. I had a long discussion with somebody over the holiday about maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe it's not just to make money, because I think you make pennies selling that stuff, but it's more to get your word out. I don't know. So my mind is open. Let me know down below. Ever since I started asking for comments about that, more people have said they like the fact that we don't shill for that stuff. So I don't know. My mind is open. I'll make a decision. I don't know. Maybe before the 4th of July. Okay, our next comment, number 3, Snugbuck. I don't think selling merch is begging for money. Well, unless you're threatening us with it. I think it gives us an opportunity to spread your name. And if it's fun enough or catchy enough, it might even be a conversation starter. Just think your merch could have the unforeseen consequence of helping to heal a nation. Well, I wouldn't go that far, would you?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know. But see, the room is split, as some would say, and I don't know. I'll think about it. Let us know.
I like the rubber ducky mug there.
Yeah, how about a mug with a rubber ducky, and then on the bottom it could say about the law. I don't know.
Okay, this is from Eric Browning. Marty Riggs is probably a reference to Mel Gibson's character Martin Riggs in the Lethal Weapon movies.
Yeah, remember that? Remember that the allegation was that Robert Devine was communicating with Sandra Birchmore on Facebook using a name Marty Riggs. Remember that?
Yeah.
And so it didn't cross my mind, but this Eric here says that Martin Riggs is that character. And so I said, oh, that's interesting.
I vaguely remember that movie, but I vaguely remember that was his name, Martin Riggs.
Well, I had to look it up. But our viewers are on top of things. They're very bright. They really are. Okay, Brenna O'Brien, one of my favorites, who's always with us. I have been wondering why Team Read agreed to seal the Proctor documents. Why did Team Read agree to seal the Proctor documents? They are about full transparency, and I have a feeling they will end up in court to battle it out. Is there a world in which the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office gave the teams an ultimatum also? Could the O'Keefe attorneys be at fault to not adding the state troopers to the case? I've been curious about that. Do you have any thoughts on those two?
Well, I don't think that the plaintiffs need to add anybody else like the state troopers. So the O'Keefe's, they have sued somebody. Now, if Karen Read is saying that somebody else interfered or somebody else did it, then she would have to file a counterclaim against the state troopers in that case, or not a counterclaim, but a cross claim. She would have to, no, not cross claim. That's when she would have to bring them into the case,
right?
As a third party defendant. But I don't think that the O'Keefe's attorneys are at fault.
No, I don't either. My answer to this is that the O'Keefe's perceive that law enforcement is on their side.
Yeah.
The people on the law enforcement side, and I know this from people that have told me this, are extremely upset. They still think Karen Read was guilty. And you see it in our comments section. There are people that say that she was guilty and you know it. How can you be an attorney? Blah, 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 blah. So there is that sentiment out there. And so my perception is that the O'Keefe people think that law enforcement is on their side, and many of them are. And so why would they anger them by bringing them into the case?
Yeah, and you can't really sue for an inadequate investigation. That's not something that you can sue a public entity for. There has to be some kind of.
If there was intent, if they could prove intent, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a thing. I mean, certainly Karen Read can point the finger at the state troopers. However, that is procedurally done in Massachusetts. I was thinking of counterclaim, but that wouldn't be right because the state troopers are not parties. Then I was thinking cross claim, but that's not suing someone that's already suing you. So I really don't know how it would work in Massachusetts. But in California, it would just be that she would point the finger to somebody else.
Right. Well, you said earlier on when you were talking about, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I apologize.
No, go ahead.
I get chided down below.
Okay.
You were rude to Yoli, so I
No.
apologize. I really do. No,
No.
people say that all the time that I'm rude, but
No, you're
and
not.
Matt, you said before that earlier in your career you sued state entities, and we've talked about this before. The way it works in Massachusetts is we have a Massachusetts Tort Claims Act. It's Mass General Laws, Chapter 278, and it requires presentment within 2 years. Don't do it within 2 years, you're out of luck. And presentment means you give the basics to whoever the authorized individual is in that entity. And the procedural mess is there. I don't really know if there's a basis for it with the O'Keefes. Now, with Karen Read, that's a different subject. As to Brenna's first point, she wonders why Team Read agreed to keep the Proctor documents private, confidential. My view of that, and I don't know, my view of that is they were forced into a corner. I mean, how can you trust, Laura McLaughlin during the Reed trials said, oh, I've looked into the Proctor matters and there was nothing wrong. It was, I don't see anything exculpatory. And it's like, so these are the people, not her personally, but the office of Michael Morrissey. These are the people that you can't trust. These are the people that said, oh, there's nothing bad in there. And then, the matter is over in Judge Krupp's courthouse. And they're saying, look, there's a lot of stuff here. So we got to handle it with care. And my view of it is that I think that the Reed team was pushed into a corner. You can either get the same old Michael Morrissey, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, or, you can let us give you everything and, just play our game and keep it all confidential. And if you contest anything, bring one of those 14-day motions. I don't know. And I think maybe, the Reed team is pretty bright. The Reed team is pretty bright. We've talked about that before. And I think maybe none of this was spoken, but this was what's in the back of their minds. We can't trust these people at the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office in Canton. So let's play their game. Let's see if they'll give us everything if we agree to the confidentiality. That's my speculation. That's all it is.
Well, my speculation is that I don't think the judge would allow some of that information to be admissible in court, because some of it may not have to, may be too prejudicial, because, just because something is relevant, if it's too prejudicial, the judge can, if it's unduly prejudicial, the judge can exclude it. So maybe some of the things are really bad in Proctor's phone, and it's like awful that, the Karen Reed's attorneys know that the judge is never going to allow that. So they just agreed to be in good graces with the judge. But your scenario is also possible too.
Yeah, so we don't know. I think your idea is good too. I mean, we just don't know. I mean, when Proctor said what he said or read his own texts in trial one, it was just so despicable that everybody in the world, except for the governor of Massachusetts, thought it was despicable and condemned the man. And so he wasn't even brought into the mix in trial two. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the civil cases. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the civil cases. Proctor now is not only dishonorably discharged, but he is also decertified. He has another layer of appeal, but I could win the Boston Marathon too. So if you know me, you know what the chances of that are. So anyhow, that is our comments. Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I think we covered everything. I mean, I don't have any closing thoughts today.
Okay, me neither. Just that thank you for being with us in 2025. We have really been encouraged by the fact that we've done as well as we have for a little channel. I think we've done well. So that's my closing thought. And I guess for an emoji, how about just like you see over my shoulder, the scales of justice. Give us a scales of justice. Okay, Yoli, Happy New Year. Have a good one. I hope you're doing something fun.
I don't know. Probably stay home.
Yeah, me too. I don't like dealing with all the drunks on the roads. It's not a good day. It's really just not a good day. Oh, you know what I forgot to do is to tell people that it doesn't cost you anything. We do not sell you the mugs or anything else. That doesn't cost you anything. So as these folks are going to tell you, a subscription's free.
You pay for a subscription?
I do not.
Ask it differently. I'm going to allow that.
Well, you know now because you follow. You pay for a subscription?
I do not.
Did you get one for free?
Yes. I was not paying to any social media.
All right, Mr. Brennan.
Sorry, I have just a few more questions.
It's denied.
I was not paying to any social media.
Okay.
Okay, Happy New Year, Yoli. Happy New Year, everyone. Have a good one. Whether you are in the grocery store, the gas station, or anywhere else, please remember to be kind to people. You don't know what they're going through. And the same goes for our comments section. We want you to comment, but be nice, be kind, be positive if you can. And thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good one.